The .NET Core podcast is supported by our listeners who have become patrons. To see a full list of the patrons, or to join them, head over to .NETCore.show/patrons. Hello everyone and welcome to the .NET Core podcast, an award-winning podcast where we reach into the core of the .NET technology stack and, with the help of the .NET community, present you with the information that you need in order to grok the many moving parts of one of the biggest cross-platform multi-application frameworks on the planet. I am your host, Jamie GaProgMan Taylor. In this episode, I talked with Tanya Janca about application security, sometimes called appsec. We Hack Purple, which is a community of people who want to make all applications more secure, the free courses that We Hack Purple are providing, and we swap stories of working to make applications more secure. Tanya's actually been on the podcast in the past, back on episode 77, when we talked about her book Alice and Bob Learn Application Security. Interestingly, Tanya has a whole new book planned, which she'll be working on when this episode drops. Along the way, we discussed Tanya's new book, OWASP, and what they are and what they do and what OWASP means, recommended security headers for HTTP, and most importantly, content security policy, and how important they can be when the spam really hits the fan. So let's sit back, open up a terminal, type in .NET New Podcast, and let the show begin. So, Tanya, I just want to thank you for being on the show again. This is the second time you're here. Thank you very much for taking some time to speak to us today.
Thank you so much for having me back, Jamie.
Oh, you're very welcome. Very welcome. You're always welcome on the show. It's a very, very niche topic that we talk about, and obviously, you're an amazing guest. So, thank you very much.
Awesome.
So, perhaps for the people who haven't heard your previous appearance, which will be linked in the show notes, so don't worry about not being able to find that. Would you mind giving the folks listening just a quick introduction? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Tanya Janca, and I am a giant nerd who is obsessed with the security of software. I was a software developer a really long time, and then around maybe 9 years ago, I met this ethical hacker, and he convinced me to switch into cybersecurity. And very quickly, I figured out, there's a job where I could do security, but hang out with software developers all day. So it's like I get the best of both worlds, and that is called appsec, or application security. And then I started speaking at conferences because then you get in free. And then I eventually started a blog, and then eventually I wrote a book. And then I started my own giant learning academy called We Hack Purple. And then some new things happened recently that I think we're going to talk about at some point. So I've done a lot of stuff.
Awesome. That really is a lot of stuff. And I have to say, I echo the sentiment of speaking at conferences because you get in for free. I've done that so many times. It's brilliant.
Yes.
And then you get the bonus of people think that you know what you're talking about, which is my case, not yours.
It is really awesome because then everyone wants to come say hi to you. And as a big extrovert, this is pretty awesome in my books. If I was an introvert, I probably wouldn't consider that a plus.
Yep. Totally get that. I've been on the other end of that where there's a queue of people and I'm in the queue to talk to the person afterwards. Luckily, that's never happened to me. Maybe because my talks have always been rubbish, but who can say?
Or maybe you answered all the questions so well. People are like, I don't even know what to ask. He said everything.
I like the positive spin there. I like that. I like it. Excellent. So, so firstly, let's talk about We Hack Purple, because, this is going to go out in a couple of months after we've recorded, but you've got some pretty big news that's happened recently. So
yes, so We Hack Purple got acquired by Bright Security around 2 weeks ago. And as a result, so Bright Security makes a dynamic application security testing tool, and they make automated security unit tests. And that is very cool. And I've been friends with the Bright guys. So they used to be called NeuroLegion. I've been friends with them since before I started We Hack Purple. And then I started We Hack Purple and Bright was getting bigger. And I joined their advisory board maybe a year and a half ago. And I was kind of helping give feedback and trying to basically help them build the best DAST ever. And then they did a whole bunch of fundraising late last year. And they're like, so we just did all this fundraising and we're thinking maybe we could spend some money on you. And I was like, oh, do you want to like build more content together? They're like, we were kind of wondering if our two companies could just like be like one company. And I was like, oh. I was like, that sounds great. And the thing that I always wanted that they knew, I was like, listen, I want to be able to pay my bills, but I wish I could just give away all my content for free, because a big goal of mine is to try to make all software more secure, not just the stuff I'm working on or just the clients that pay for consulting services. Like I wanted to reach a broader audience, which is why I wrote a book. You do not write a textbook to make money. Trust me, Jamie. And so they agreed that as part of the acquisition, we would take all the We Hack Purple courses, put them into the community and just make them free for anyone. So if you want to take secure coding, if you want to take application security courses, there's an Azure security course in there. There's like a how to scan things in like a CI/CD pipeline. Like we have like a bunch of courses in there now. And I'm really excited to be able to share that content with everyone with no paywall anymore.
Oh, amazing. So how do I go about signing up for a course then? What do I
So
do?
you go to community.wehackpurple.com and you have to join. So you have to like make an email, like, or give your email address, make a password, and then you have to tell us why you want to join. And so you could just say, I want to take some courses, or I want to learn appsec, or I'm interested in hacking, or whatever your reason. And then you have to agree to the code of conduct. So we all have to be nice and professional to each other, which is super reasonable. And then basically, yeah, someone reviews it. As long as your answer isn't like, because I would like to harass others and cause havoc, we'll pretty much always approve you.
Oh, yeah, caught me already.
Well, we did have one company, like someone from a company join. They're like, oh, I'm going to sell everyone my product. And we're like, oh, advertising's not allowed in here. Sorry. You can come and you can learn, but you're not allowed advertising. He's like, okay, cool. I'll just come. And like, he still joined, but you just didn't advertise. But you're allowed, like, for instance, we have like this area with like jobs, and people are allowed to come in and post jobs or say they're looking or whatever and try to pair off together for potential, you know what I mean? Like it's hard to hire in security right now. So yeah. So basically, as long as you're not going to do bad stuff, you get approved. And people that admit they're going to do bad stuff, that is like, it's not often that people are like, you know what my intentions are? They're pretty bad. Yeah.
No, that's awesome that you sort of set that at the start, right? Especially with the code of conduct. I love that. If I'm ever attending a conference or I'm dealing with a client or whatever, they have a code of conduct. That's a big thumbs up in my book, because that's like, even it. How do I put it? I'm trying to pick my words carefully. It sucks that we have to have them, but it's great that we can have them. You know, it's really dreadful that we have to have these sets of rules that we say, look, you can't do this, you can't do that, you must treat people with respect. But it's great that we can have them and then enforce them too. That's brilliant, because then you find the bad apple in the group and you just, nope, you're out because you've agreed to this and now you're violating it or whatever.
Yes. And we have a big team of volunteers that moderate and plan events and streams together. And they're really good about enforcing the code of conduct. So, for instance, we had a live stream and someone came on and they're breaking the code of conduct, to say the least. And the presenter stopped and was like, hey, you're being rude. And then everyone in the audience was like, that's not acceptable. We want you to leave now. And then the person left. And I was like, wow, I didn't even have to, you did it. Wow. And it was just like so great. And then it was funny because the person had been like drawing inappropriate things on the screen, and the presenter was like, you can't even draw, buddy, get out of here. I felt like she turned into this funny joke and then continued on, right? And it was just, yeah, it's really good to have a lot of individuals who feel comfortable. And like, so We Hack Purple, like as the company, we have these core values, and 3 of them are inclusion, diversity, and accessibility. And it's really important to us that like every person who wants to participate can, and that they feel welcome and included. And so sometimes that means like adding lots of descriptions to things so people that can't see as well as everyone else can still consume all the content, or adding closed captioning, or just making sure that we invite people from various communities. Like now the courses are free and that's awesome. But previously we had a diversity scholarship and we put over 100 people through our entire Application Security Foundation's like series of courses and certification, because I want to change the way our industry is, because right now it is not as diverse as it could be. And that means we're missing out. Like, even though I feel it is right to make sure every person is included, I feel like on the other side of that, not having everyone included is harming the industry. Like, we don't have enough people to fill all the jobs. We don't have enough different viewpoints so that we miss threats. We miss different angles of testing. We miss different outcomes because we don't have every type of person involved and welcome. And so, yeah, I feel really good about a lot of the awesome stuff we did in there. And a code of conduct is the first step.
It is, and all of that is absolutely amazing. I'm all about trying to get as many different people into the conversation, whatever the conversation is, right?
Yeah.
I'm all about that myself. So that's one of the reasons why there's a transcript for the podcast. A lot of people say you should do it for SEO. I don't care about SEO. I care about the one person who comes along and says, you're talking to this person and they are amazing, but I can't consume the content. Well, let me try and help you to consume that content. Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm all about letting as many people into the conversation as possible. And so there's something that I do at like conferences. It's not something I invented. When people stand around in a circle and they're having a chat, try and make like a Pac-Man shape. So that, like, can you imagine like a Pac-Man with the mouth open? You make that kind of shape, so you're leaving an empty wedge. So then if someone wants to be part of the conversation, they could just walk straight in. They don't have to wait around and look for a gap or say, hey, can I join? They just straight in. Right. And
that's nice.
It's not a huge thing, but I feel like to the one person who wants to join, that could be a big step, right? Like, say you said earlier on about being an extrovert, being at conferences, it's great. What about people who are introverted? What about people who have alternative needs, maybe our neurodivergent friends who need to not have to make a big deal of joining a group, or maybe someone who's scared of joining groups, right? You leave that space open. Perhaps, I don't know because I'm no expert, but perhaps that gives them a chance to just walk up and say, hey, can I be part of this conversation? Absolutely, my friend. Come on in. We're happy to have you.
Yes.
Whether that's the case or not, I don't know, but that's what I do.
No, I think it's great.
You're absolutely right, though. We need more voices in our community that are not just one type of person, right? But that is not something for me to figure out, because I'm not smart enough to figure that out. But I will do what I can to help, right? And if I can make a gap for people to walk into, then let's do that. If I can produce some audio content by talking to wonderful people like yourself to help educate people and give them that leg up into, right now I know a little bit more and I can Google around the subject, fantastic.
Yes. It's so good, Jamie.
And I feel like that sort of leads us on to something that you do every week called Cyber Mentoring Monday.
Yes.
I wonder, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So when I joined cybersecurity, like, my friend became my professional mentor and started teaching me about stuff. And then very quickly, I found more advanced mentors, like, because I wanted to learn as much as humanly possible. So I found another one and another one. And I found myself really lucky to find people who were willing to mentor me and spend so much time and energy investing in me as a person and as a professional. And so then I started a mentoring program in my OWASP chapter, and we paired tons of people together, and it was really awesome. And then I figured out doing that I am not an awesome matchmaker, as much as I wish I was, that I would be like, you and you, I think you'll like each other. And I was not right a lot of the time, which is fine. And so then people were asking me, can you be my professional mentor? And I started mentoring 4 women and 1 man. And then other people asked, and I was like, oh, I can't, because then I'll be a bad mentor, because I won't have time for the people who I mentor now. Right? Like, I won't give time to them. I'll be crappy if I say yes to everyone. So then I was like, well, I want to find you someone. So I kept making all these introductions. I was spending so much time. And so then one day I did this post on LinkedIn and I said, hey, this person I know is looking for professional mentors. Anyone want to mentor them? And all these people came out and said, yeah, I would love to give back. And then all these other people came and said, actually, I'm looking for a professional mentor too. And people started pairing off, and I had 900 comments on this LinkedIn post. And yeah, and so then I figured out that, so I posted it on Twitter, and there's tons of people. And so I started a hashtag called just Mentoring Monday. And after around 1 or 2 years, it got so big that all these other areas were using it, and you couldn't find the cybersecurity or InfoSec one. So I took a vote of all my followers and all the other people helping to run Cyber Mentoring Monday, because it's not just me anymore. And basically, we decided it would be hashtag Cyber Mentoring Monday every single Monday on Twitter. And even so, like, today's Monday that we're recording this. And some Mondays there'll be 20, 30 retweets and tons of comments. And sometimes it's just one person reaching out. But most of what actually happens is like an iceberg, where we see the top in the public comments and the hashtag, but beneath the surface, there's tons and tons of direct messages. You know, one person reaches out, and sometimes people will tweet, hey, did you know your direct messages are closed? And they're like, oh, and all of a sudden, like, all these messages pile in, and it's like, yes, I'm interested in helping you, or hey, could we have a virtual coffee, etc. And so over the years, thousands of people have found mentors now and made friends and found new employees. And yeah, I went to a conference right before COVID, and this man walked up to me and he's like, I need to buy you a coffee, because a year ago I answered your Cyber Mentoring Monday and I met this nice young lady. And then 6 months ago, like after 6 months of mentoring her and like just seeing her progress, my boss was like, listen, I'm going to let you hire for a junior appsec role. And he's like, and we hired her, and the whole team loves her, and she's just so amazing. And she's learning so fast. And I would never have met her if it wasn't for this. And so I want to have a coffee with you and say thanks. And I was like, yay, these are the best stories ever. Yeah. And there's a zillion stories like that of, you know, this person introduced me to this other person, then I found this job, or yeah, it's nice to connect people and see also just how much kindness and generosity that there is in the information security industry, just how many people are willing to give and like take someone under their wing, teach them, make those key introductions that help people find their very first job, because that's the hardest job to find, right? And yeah, it's been really beautiful to watch.
That's amazing. Being able to give that many people the chance to reach out and connect with another person directly and say, I want to learn this, or I want to teach this. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah. So if people want to join it, just go on Twitter and look up the hashtag. So it's all one word, Cyber Mentoring Monday, and then look at latest, because it's been years, right? And then just see what the latest posts are. And then you can read what other people are looking for. And then that might help you carve out your message, because when you are looking for a mentor, you want to get across that you are interested, you're passionate, you're willing to do the work, and especially what topic or topics interest you. That's very important. Like, hey, I want a mentor is really vague, and people don't know what you're looking for. And so, hey, I've been studying appsec and I'm really interested, and one day I want to become an appsec engineer, and I'd really love to have a mentor to help, teach me the things I need so that then I can make this career transition. Like, that's really easy to answer because you know what they want. Yeah.
That's brilliant. I'll make sure to include in the show notes a link onto Twitter that does the search for the hashtag. And if I can figure out how, jump straight to latest as well. So if you're interested, do, click through and there'll be a link there.
Awesome.
Now that's pretty amazing, that is. I have to say. Wow. So with we were chatting just before we started recording. And because obviously you've written the book Alice and Bob Learn Application Security, and I showed it. I was like, "Hey, I still have mine." And then you said, "Oh, by the way, I'm working on another book." So I was wondering, can you give us a sneak preview as to what that's about?
Yes. So Alice and Bob are not done learning. They want to learn secure coding next, and so I just moved. And I announced on Twitter I bought a really small farm. It's 3 acres. I'm going to grow vegetables and berries and fruit and stuff. And so I'm like kind of setting things up, and I'm planning basically starting in June to start writing the next book. And so I've already arranged some technical editors. And so, yeah, I'm going to be putting out some calls on Twitter of, if you were going to read a secure coding book, what is important to you and what do you wish would be covered? Like, what is a mystery for you? Or like, do you want, and I'm really into checklists, Jamie. Ever since I like made the courses for We Hack Purple, I'm always like, I don't want them to forget. So I'm like, what if I make like a little 1-page summary with some check boxes? And so there's going to be there's going to be some checklists involved. But I want to make a book that's really accessible and easy to read and easy to understand, but that you could also use as a reference later. Because I have to say, it is so handy, Jamie, to be able to say, okay, so just turn to page 98 and the code's there. You can just copy it, right? It's like, it's really helpful to have like a reference guide that ages well. And so, yeah, that's what I'm going to try my best to do with more silly stories and like funny outcomes of Alice and Bob and how your secure coding relates to everyday people.
Excellent. Okay. Do you know what you said it's going to be secure coding? Is it going to be like language and framework agnostic, or are you picking one thing, or are you sort of jumping around? Do you have a plan yet?
So the plan is going to be general secure coding, which will be agnostic. So things like input validation. But then I want to cover some of the main languages, and I'm going to be doing some Twitter polls and LinkedIn polls. So I would like to have like a section on major frameworks and kind of gotchas and cool security features they have that you should take advantage of. Right. So obviously .NET's going to be in there. Yeah. But I also want to know what people are dying to know, if that makes sense. So for instance, like TypeScript it's a newer language, but the people that like it love it. And so it's like, should I have a couple pages on TypeScript? And like, if you're into TypeScript, like here's some things to watch out for. And like, here are some things, because you don't know a feature exists necessarily, right? And sometimes someone's like, oh, well, why don't you use this? I'm like, well, I didn't know that awesomeness existed. Why did no one tell me? So I'm going to try to tell you. So I was thinking the first half of the book would be agnostic things that apply to every language, and then the second half would be more specifics. But I want to make sure if I get into specifics, it'll be stuff that helps the most amount of people. So get ready for some Twitter polls, people. I need your advice.
We all know that first step is for everyone to go and follow you on Twitter. That's the first thing, right?
Yes. She Hacks Purple is my handle. So definitely I'll see you all there.
Yeah, go get following Tanya on Twitter, not just because of these polls, but because the stuff that you put out there is amazing as well. So let's do that, right?
Awesome.
Excellent. Okay. So last time we were on, we talked a couple of different things to look at, to do with like input validation and things like that. So sort of some of the techniques that you should do to make your applications more secure. And I think we did touch on the fact that .NET takes care of one of the big ones for you, which is CSRF or CSRF.
Cross-site request forgery. So they automatically pass the token for you back and forth rather than you have to program it yourself. That's awesome. Some of the other frameworks do it, but most of them don't. Most of them you have to add like a third-party package or something like that. .NET has a bunch of cool stuff out of the box, and same with .NET Core because it's developed by the same giant company. But a thing that you and I were talking about that's slightly different between .NET versus .NET Core is security headers. And so some of you might not be aware, but Jamie made a NuGet package that does a bunch of the security headers for you for .NET Core. So .NET Core out of the box doesn't have a web.config. If you decide you want to host it in IIS, then IIS will make a web.config for you. But traditionally in .NET, that's where you would put all your security header information. So when I switched from .NET over to .NET Core, I was like, where did my security headers go? I am extremely upset because I feel security headers, so you might laugh at this, but I feel like security headers are just like seatbelts, but for web apps. So seatbelts are not sexy. They're not exciting, but they're also not that much effort. And when the crap hits the fan, you're very pleased when you do not go through the windshield because of your nice, nifty seatbelt. You're like, I never noticed how much I like the seatbelt before. And so security headers are just like that. So they do nothing almost all the time. But then when something bad happens, they block it or they reduce the risk or reduce the damage. So for instance, content security policy header, which a lot of people, it's the most difficult of the security headers because you have to list out all the stuff you're using that's not from your own website. So let's say, there's like a cool front end look that you want. And so you've decided to use that, and that's cool, but it calls out to another web domain to get that stuff. Okay, but you have to list it. And so the reason why we do this is because cross-site requests or cross-site scripting is in lots and lots of websites all across the internet. When there's cross-site scripting, the first thing they try to do is see, hey, can I call out to another page? Because usually if you have a field, it's like you're allowed 50 characters. Like we were talking about the pizza you were ordering before we started recording. And basically, like you can't write that much badness in 50 characters. You can't do that much damage. So they're like, let's see if we can call out to another domain, like lotsofelvilstuff.com, let's say. And so they try to call out there, and content security policy is like, no way, man, not cool, not allowed. And so all of a sudden their thing is much less powerful. So then the next thing they do is they're like, well, you know what, let's see if I can steal this cookie because I bet the session ID's in there. And then I can impersonate this user. And so if you've turned on the cookie settings, like secure, so that it's only over encrypted channels, and then HTTP only, which says JavaScript cannot touch my cookie, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can't even get the session cookie. This website's worthless. And so it really helps protect you against other issues you might have. And so I am really excited that Jamie wrote this security header kind of NuGet package so that you don't have to do it. But I was telling him, I'm like, there's new security headers. Did you know? And so I'm hoping that maybe I can, or even listeners, we can like try to be bad influences on Jamie so that he adds more security headers.
Totally. I'm happy to add more stuff. I need some stuff to live stream. Let's do this.
Yes. Awesome. Yeah.
This episode of the .NET Core podcast is supported in part by Zoom Platform. Zoom Platform. No, not the video conferencing app. Zoom-platform.com. The premier DRM-free games portal. Unlike directionless larger stores, Zoom operates more like a boutique, offering all-time classics such as Duke Nukem, exclusive hidden gems like Hard War, and innovative indies like Wrecker Sunken Land. Zoom will even take requests and hunt games down for you. When Zoom signs titles, they make sure to get every release, version, language, you name it. That's how Zoom carves its niche. Zoom hand scans box art, manuals and other bonus content, and even records soundtracks. On top of all of this, Zoom always makes a point of securing the rights to obscure expansion packs and mods. When you buy the Zoom Platform edition of a game, you know you are getting the most complete and definitive edition. Zoom's staff and technology are best in class. In fact, when competitors can't get a game running on modern hardware, they go directly to Zoom. They're some of Zoom's best customers. Zoom provides unparalleled 24/7 customer service and closeness with its user base. Zoom's management interacts directly with customers via Discord. They take their small business approach very seriously. Zoom-platform.com, your friendly neighborhood DRM-free game store. And if you end up on the Discord server, look me up because I'm in there too. I often compare the content security policy to sort of like, you know how if you've ever been to a nightclub, there's someone outside and they, you know, in the movies they say, if you're not on the list, you're not getting in. That's quite literally how I explain it to other people, right?
Yes, exactly. Like you're not on the list. It's an approved list. It's like these outside things are allowed to come in, like these images or this script or this whatever, and everything else is no way, Jose. And the first time I remember I put it on a website and these devs, I was like, listen, you know, you're not using any security headers. These are the ones I would like. I'm like, but do you have a list of your outside stuff? And they're like, oh, we're not using anything that's not from within our own domain. We don't do that. We turn it on and the entire website's like just this ugly mess. And I was like, so maybe maybe we use it. They're like, okay, it turns out there's 2 sites we do use. Like, that's cool. Like you can use them. That's cool. Like anything that some dev has picked out is probably fine. It's all those other sites that you would not choose on your own that are likely to be malicious. Like the first time I called out to an outside website was a zillion years ago, and it was Google Maps. And I was like, I'm just going to call the Google Maps API and just, I'm going to feed it stuff, and then I'm going to present maps. And there's an employee directory because we had 10 or 12 different buildings across Ottawa where I was living. And someone would book a meeting with you and they'd be like, meet me in meeting room 3 on the 3rd floor. I'm like, of where in my city? Like what what building? Hello, how do I get there? And most of them were downtown, so you could actually just walk. So I would make it so that you could see like the best path for you to get to that meeting and how much time you needed. Because yeah, the first couple of weeks people kept inviting me to meetings and it turned out they were in other buildings and I was so confused. And I was like, let's make this easier. And so you could just go to the internet, look up the person, and it would show you this is how you get to them. And it would even have a floor map of like, this is where they are, this is where HR thinks they sit in the building. It was not always right, but it was mostly right.
Totally. I really like that example. The example that I use, and before I do it, I saw it's not exactly a software bill of materials, but I like that Content Security Policy (CSP) can give you almost a software bill of materials for the places you call out to, right?
Yes.
And
Yes. All the external things that you use as opposed to the internal things. So like your NuGet package would be an internal thing because you're putting it up inside your app and then building your app. Yeah. I think having a list is important because when the crap hits the fan and there's a security incident and people are trying to investigate, often it is not that it's rarely an insider threat or an intentional insider threat. It's usually something from external. And yeah, I have investigated a lot of incidents, Jamie.
so the example that I always give is there was a story 4, 5 years ago. I want to say it's around 5 years ago. In the UK, most of our sort of government or public run stuff is all sort of hosted at one domain. So if you want to learn about something to do with the UK government, you go to gov.uk. It's all there. The great thing about that is it's all entirely open source. So you can click a button, it takes you through to the source code. You can read through it and figure out how they've built their stuff. Brilliant. Or rather, most of it is open source. Obviously, there's some secrets and stuff, but they also have like public APIs, so you can actually poke at an API and say, "Give me all of the public holidays," and it returns a JSON object with all of the public holidays. How cool is that? But
That's very cool.
I know, right? It's really good for like if you need to test whether your system can call out to an unlisted, or rather an outside of an allow list, because obviously you set up an allow list of URLs you can call. If I can get to the UK government and I'm not doing any business with them, then my allow list isn't working, right? But the example that I always use is that our health service offers a screen reader option, so you push a button and have the page read out to you. Brilliant. Problem was, so this goes back to what you were saying about content security policy, and almost like a supply chain attack. They were calling out to a JavaScript file, but they were doing no validation as to whether is this the JavaScript file we originally thought it was. And some bright spark thought, hey, if I can hack that JavaScript file and insert a Bitcoin miner, then anyone who hits the website and wants to have the page read out to them, which is a legitimate thing, it helps with accessibility. Yeah. Every time you load that page, regardless of whether you hit play, then a Bitcoin will start mining on the person's computer. And that was, they weren't attacking the actual website, they were attacking something that was called in, which is something you could protect with using a CSP, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I feel like so when I was a dev, I did so many of the things I tell people not to do now because I went to college in the 90s, right? Like I graduated in 2000 and like had already been working in IT a few years at that point because I started working in IT when I was in high school. And so I like, do you know what I mean? I feel Like there's a lot of people who have been programming a very long time and like they learn stuff as they continue, but no one takes them aside and says, "Hey, I gotta teach you AppSec." Like,
Mm.
and so I feel like it's become more popular now for companies to actually pay for training for their employees, which I think is important because when I was a software developer, I was allowed one course a year and I could only take them from this place called Learning Tree. And all the classes I thought were just like not really for me. They weren't what I wanted to learn. So I'd be like, someone else can have my budget, or I'll just buy a book and read it. And now I think it's changing. I feel like companies are investing in their employees more. And I don't just mean like security training, I mean all sorts of training. And with the great resignation happening right now, where people are like, if I have to come back to the office, I'm not working for you anymore. I feel like
Mhm.
training can be part of the attraction of a job. Like when I was in the Canadian government, I had to learn French as an adult. And I remember interviewing and they're like, well, we're not allowed paying you more than anyone else at your level. And I'm like, you're going to pay for a one-on-one French tutor for me once a week. And then I'll come. And they were like, done. Because they weren't allowed to give me a raise. They weren't allowed to give me a signing bonus. I'm like, to me, this is a signing bonus. And so I got to have a tutor for a year, which was awesome. And then eventually I had to do night school for quite a while before I could pass all the tests, but having your employee help pay for that or your employer help pay for that. And so I feel like more organizations are like, if we want our devs to do secure coding, we actually like some of them will know and some of them won't know, and we can't just assume anymore. And so I see a lot of AppSec professionals where they're learning how to teach so they can teach their teams. Like they're like, I found this bug. Let me show you all how to find this bug in your own code and how to squash it so that we don't have it again. And I think it's really great. Like when I hadn't done any public speaking before when I started doing AppSec. And I remember my team was like, well, if you want everyone to start scanning stuff, someone's got to show them. And I think it's you. And I was like, I don't know how to give a speech. And they're like, you play music on stage all the time, Tanya, because I was in a band. And they're like, you sing for hundreds of people. You can't speak to 10 devs. I was like, those are scary. Those are my peers over there. I really care what they think. But eventually I got over my nerves and I'd be like, look at this cool bug I found. And so I feel like I find it exciting to see like how many security people are like just learning something and then sharing it with all the people where they work or even beyond. I think that's really cool.
It really is. It really is. And I think that's the best way for someone to spread that knowledge really quickly. One of the things that I used to do at a previous employer was I used to offer lunch and learns. So it was like, hey, come to lunch, bring your lunchbox, whatever you bring, go get a sandwich or whatever, get a coffee, whatever it is you do for lunch. Then come into this conference room. I'm going to show you something, and I'm going to show you I'm going to show you the problem. I'm going to show you the issues it could cause, and I'm going to show you how to fix it. Because then, even if you only show 4 people, those 4 people then go back to their teams and go, Tanya just showed me this thing.
Yeah.
And it spreads almost like a virus. I'm worried about saying it like that, but it spreads like a virus.
When I was a dev, so I was a dev for around 17 years, including the time I was in college, because I worked at a startup for most of the time I was in college. Then I worked for Adobe for a while and Nokia for a while. And so basically, like as I became the senior dev, I would realize that not all my devs were created equal or more so trained equally and experienced equally. And so I wanted them to know more modern stuff. And so I remember I had this friend named Wes, and Wes is an MVP like you. And so he came in and showed us like all these secret tricks in PowerPoint or in SharePoint. And then he came in and he showed us a bunch of cool stuff in TFS, Team Foundation Server, which was cool at the time. This was a long time ago. And then I had this other guy named Ahmed come in, then this other guy named Karim. And I had people coming in for years. And then I joined the OWASP community, the Open Web Application Security Project community, the local chapter. And then I was like, I really want to know about like how to do code review. I feel like I'm not very strong in that. So I would just ask around till I found someone. I'd be like, could you give us a presentation on that, please? And so I was like, this is so cool. All I have to do is organize a meetup and this person will teach me for free. And so I did like basically between doing all the stuff I was doing at work as a dev and then switching to security, I was actually organizing talks for like around 7 or 8 years before I had the guts to actually do my own talk. And I was like, nope, still looks terrifying. And my co-leader from OWASP, his name's Sharif Kusa, he's like, Tanya, you can do it. You will not die. I promise. I'm like, you don't know that. But he was really great. And like the whole chapter, like a bunch of them let me like practice presenting to them. And it was really brutal, Jamie. So when you see me now, you're like, oh, she's so good at presenting. I was not good then. It was very bad. I was like, I'm going to die. Like, you are for sure not going to die. And I don't know if you've ever been like really nervous and you like feel like you can hear your heart beating out loud. Like I was like, how can they hear me talking? My heart is so loud, but they're right. I did not die. And now like, I don't even get nervous at all now. I get really excited. I'm like, this is going to be so much fun. But it was, so to anyone who's listening and you're thinking like, oh, I can't do that. You can, and it's less scary every time. And eventually it's not scary at all. And you just get to share this thing that you're super excited about. And that's the thing that I like the most, if that makes sense, Jamie. Like, you do this podcast and you just get to talk to people and basically interview them and ask them these awesome questions. And you get to, I don't know, in my opinion, it's like just this really fun, exciting thing that you get to do to share knowledge. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, because like I see it as I get to talk to all these amazing people in the community, and I'm learning at the same time as the listener is learning. And I was actually asked this the other day. I was asked, what is success for you with this podcast? And I said, if one person walks away from listening to a conversation and they know one new thing, even if it's just enough to be able to go and Google something to get the full context. So like asking for 45 to 90 minutes of someone's time is a huge investment. But if they walk away going, oh, they were talking about content security policy, let me go look that up. Boom. Right? That's it. Win.
Yes. And when you host, so I have my own podcast, the We Had Purple podcast, you get to just send invites to people that you admire. And a lot of them say yes to be on the show. Like, I'm like, joke's on you. I get to meet you. This is so exciting.
Absolutely.
Like, and it's both ways, because when you're a guest on a podcast, it's like an honor to be invited on someone's podcast. But then when you're the host, I'm like, I get to just invite all these people that I've always wanted to meet or have the chance to talk to. And then they are going to teach me something. I'm like, this is such a good deal.
Yep. That's why I do it. So let's talk about that real quick. The podcast. Let's talk about that.
Awesome. Okay, so the We Hack Purple podcast, the first year the first season, we concentrate on every single type of different job in information security. Because there are so when I joined InfoSec, I thought you were the firewall person. You had to do risk management, which looks like a lot of paperwork and is not really my jam. Or you had to be an ethical hacker or pen tester. So I was like, well, I guess I'm going to be a pen tester because I don't understand firewalls very well. And then I discovered there was the, application security, which I consider sort of the bridge between the security team and the software developers. You kind of join them together and make sure, I don't know, you basically get to hang out with devs most of your day, which I think is awesome. But then there's threat hunting, there's security analyst, there's security architect, there's malware analysis and reverse engineering. And there's so many different jobs. I was curious. So I was like, maybe audience members will be curious. And it turns out there were. But then we did, in my opinion, almost every single type of job. And it took 50 episodes. So I worked really hard on it. But and mostly I just got to meet cool people. But then season 2 is now Teach Me Something Security. So it's little short lessons about whatever the thing is the person is really good at. So we had someone come on and explain, like, what the heck is pen testing? What is pen testing as a service? What is bug bounty? Like, how the differences of that are. And that was Caroline Wong. She's pretty awesome. And then I had someone, we just recorded it, and I'm hoping we're going to get it out later this month, this woman named Nicole Deb. And she was telling me what a BISO is. So a CISO is like the chief information officer, but a BISO is this brand new role that did not previously exist, where you're a business information security officer. And like she was explaining, so it's like a person that's in charge of a giant business unit. and they'll be responsible for all the security within that business unit. But for instance, if the security team screws up something royally and then the business is hurt, it's their responsibility to get that cleaned up. And so it's very interesting because if you're a chief information officer, like how basically they didn't used to serve different business units separately. It was like one tablespoon of security, swallow it for everyone, same medicine. And that's not actually the best thing for a business necessarily. Like I would like when I did security training, like at a company full time, I was like, well, we can't give the help desk the exact same training that we give like sales and marketing. That's just ridiculous. Right. And even the domain administrators versus the help desk, I want to give them slightly different training because there's slightly different things that affect them. And I really want them to be prepared. And I don't want to make them sit around for 2 hours in training so that I can cover everything for everyone. I'd rather have like just 25 minutes with help desk if that's how long it takes. And I'm only taking up as much time as I need. And so I like this new role is exciting and like learning what it is and like how you can get that job or whatever. So just like little short lessons to kind of help you understand like a specific thing and then leave. And so I'm finding it interesting to get to just ask a lot of questions about things I want, because like I'd heard of BSO a lot. I'm like, what does that actually mean? Is it hard? Yeah. It turns out though, one thing across every single episode of the We Hack Purple podcast has been, it turns out you're just better at doing security if you have empathy. It turns out that is so it took a while. It was actually my video guy that pointed it out after maybe 20, 30 episodes. He's like, every single person has described their job, like even pen testers, like that if you have empathy and can understand where the person that designed this or created this or the customer that would be using this, if you could just put yourself in their shoes, that you can constantly deliver significantly better security. You can imagine threats better. You can imagine how to solve those threats in better ways for the people you're serving. It's very interesting. Like, so then I started asking eventually and be like, would you say that one of the skills that like you would need to do this job would be empathy? And then every time like, yes, you cannot do a good job of this without. And I found that very interesting because as a software developer, I didn't feel I needed a lot of empathy to do a good job. But when I switched to appsec and I was working with I joined this team of people that were all close to retirement age, and they'd all worked, more than 20 years doing risk analysis, and they're pretty ticked off at the world because they've seen so many bad security things happen. And they're just like, I don't care if the devs have a deadline on Friday. They have to do these 12 things or they're not going to prod, and I just don't care. And I was like, we could go out of business if we don't meet our deadlines, right? That like a dev can get fired if they don't meet their deadlines, that. And I was just like telling them all the different things. I'm like, the devs have a bunch of people asking for stuff. And also like, they've been doing this project for a year. Why is this the first time you're telling them this? Well, I didn't have time. I was busy. And I was like, we need to rethink our entire model because of how we serve them. They're like, we're not serving them. I'm like, yes, that's the problem. And it was just like silence in this meeting. I'm like, it's our job to help them to do their jobs securely. That's our job. Our job's to help them. It's not to make them jump through stupid hoops. It's not so that we can check boxes on a list. It's because we want the things that they're building to be safer. So we have to adjust ourselves until we're doing the best job of that we can. And like yelling at them in meetings is really not getting us what we want. So let's try thinking of a new way. And some of the people were like, yes. And I have to say most of them were below 40 years old. And one of them she was older. She's like, yeah, it was so funny. She was like so energetic. It was great. But some of the people were just like, I'm not interested in this. And after a few months, the manager spoke to two of them who just could not get along with anyone. So I remember I walked in on the two of them and they were both looking at each other. And there's no video in this podcast, so you're going to have to imagine. But they're making these faces at each other in the hallway and then laughing. And the other one would make a face and laugh. And they're going back and forth. I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, we're practicing the faces we make when developers say stupid things so they know to shut the F up and stop asking their dumb questions. And I was so flabbergasted. I'm like, you're grown adults. and you're talking to other grown adults and you're practicing how to mock them in meetings. That's what you're doing. And they're like, we're just joking around. I'm like, no, like you've really clearly stated what you think. I'm like, I don't know if you're in the right job. And they're just like, who are you, like little girl? And I'm like, at the time, I'm like, I'm 36, shut up. But basically the manager ended up talking about them and saying like, you're too bitter to be in this role. You can't be bitter and do appsec. You need to go do something else. Maybe you can come back someday, but like you're in the wrong job now because all you are is angry. And like, I know Tanya was talking about how the two of you were like practicing faces and you're joking around and whatever, but she's like, no, I've just seen it in meeting after meeting. You don't respect the people we're supposed to serve. And I had a lot of respect for her to say that because that's a difficult conversation. She's like, I'm not saying you're fired. I'm saying we need to find a different spot for you in this organization. You have lots of corporate memory. You're both really intelligent, but you hate your job and you can't do a good job if you hate your job. So let's figure out where you're going to go from here. And I was like, whoa. She was a very interesting boss, very smart lady. But I was like, how'd it go? She's like, one of them said, oh my God, you're so right. And the other one's like, F you, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, well, you got through to one. That's great. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we can't, but that was like just this flowing thing over every episode. Is just like, if you don't care about the person that you're trying to do the security for, the security thing you make will be unusable. Usually. I mean, you could stumble upon success, but it's rare. Sorry, I didn't mean to get on like this high horse of thing, but it really struck me when I switched from software development to security because developers want to solve every problem. Like they love solving problems and they're awesome at it, which is why they're software developers. And so like whenever you talk to a dev and you're like, oh, I need to do this, like their brain immediately starts to solve this problem for you, offer solutions and ideas. But with security, it was some people was like, no, no, no. And like just such rigidity. And I'm like, we still have to do this for our client. We still have to do it. So it doesn't matter if you said no, like we still have to accomplish it. So what if we think outside the box a bit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's. Don't worry about that. I think that's an important conversation that we have to have. And it's interesting that you brought up empathy because I'm actually working on a talk at the minute about empathy in development. Because one of the things that I've noticed over the last, it may be time related, I'm not sure, but over the last 2 years, I try not to talk about the current situation. I tend to say just the wobbliness or, the last 26, 27 months. But primarily because the show's not about that. But I've noticed that over the last 2 years, there's a lot of developers out there who will pronounce the word user but put a silent L at the beginning. And I'm like, that isn't helping anyone. What are you doing? Why are you calling the user names? If it wasn't for the user, you wouldn't have a job.
Yes.
Quite literally, you are quite literally at their not their beck and call, but they require you to exist. So it's down to them that you have a job. So let's just try and see it from other people's point of view. Let's try and be respectful to each other. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier on about codes of conduct. I absolutely love that they exist, but I hate that they have to. Because, without them, people are horrible to each other. So maybe we need a developer or a developer security AppSec code of conduct. If you're going to talk, yes, we all get upset. Yes, we all get frustrated, but don't walk around calling the users names. Don't make fun by making faces at people. It's common decency stuff. Yeah, I just thought that was quite interesting. You brought that up, and I'm working on a talk about that.
I can't wait to see it. I hope that when it comes out, you share it online so I can check it out.
Oh, I certainly will. It's going to be it's starting off as a lightning talk, so it's only going to be 10 minutes. But yeah, I believe it's going to be live streamed by the meetup folks who are coordinating it. But I'm also going to see if I can record it for the podcast.
Would you like to do it at the We Hack Purple community? So almost all of our events are actually community members that speak and present to each other.
Oh.
And we have 2,000 people, so we would love to see it.
I mean, you're asking me on the podcast. I can't say.
I know. Okay, well, you could say no later and edit this out if you want to, but I think it would be something that we'd be really receptive to. That really speaks to our community for sure.
Sure, why not? I can give it a whirl. Let's see what's the worst that can happen.
Awesome.
Right? I'm not gonna die. There we go, sorted.
It's true. None of our speakers have ever died as a result of speaking or died at all, actually, which is really good odds.
That's that is really good odds.
Yeah,
So,
our community members are really, really nice. We have like a lot of first-time speakers present for us, which is awesome. And so it's a very like soft and friendly audience to like. So whenever I'm going to like, I write a new talk, I usually ask, "Is there anyone that has some free time and like I could present to you and you could give me some feedback?" And then everyone's always like, "Yes, this would be great." And so a lot of people will like read each other's blog posts or help them prepare a presentation. It's really nice to have like this little group of people, and I know the group is getting bigger and bigger, so I shouldn't call them little anymore, probably. But when you measure in thousands, you should probably not use the word little. But yeah, it's a very nice, warm, inclusive community.
awesome. Well, I mean, there's another vote for going and joining the community. Definitely go
Definitely.
join the community, folks.
Awesome.
Okay. We've talked a lot about some security stuff today, and I'm very, very conscious you have other things to be getting on with because you're a busy person. You know, your company's just been purchased. You've got a whole life to live. So what I'm thinking is, how about we do a quick roundup of places where people can go to learn about you and We Hack Purple and the book that you have already written, and a little bit of a reminder about the book that you are writing, and then again go join We Hack Purple's community, and then then you can get on with your day. You don't have to keep talking to me.
Okay, so if you want to learn just about me specifically, there's shehackspurple.ca. And I'm Canadian, that's the accent you hear. So if I said aboot at some point, I'm sorry. Um, but I have a blog there, and it's a personal blog, and then I have a newsletter and all sorts of stuff. But if you go to wehackpurple.com, then you can visit the community. You can see the podcast. There's a bunch of other resources there just to help with things. They have a newsletter as well. And like I say they, but it's us. If you want to learn more about Bright, who bought us, you can go to brightsec.com or look up Bright AppSec, all one word, on Twitter or GitHub, etc. And if you want to join me, the community specifically, just go to community.wehackpurple.com. And basically, like, that's the main place. I've found that over the years, if you want to have a thing that is just right for you, sometimes you have to build the community yourself so that you can have your favorite place to be. And so that is what I've done over the past 2.5 years. And so you're all invited to join me and so many other people who just want to talk about how we can make the world a more secure place. There's no upsells or anything like that. It's just free, and all you got to do is be nice. Pretty good deal.
Awesome. I like it. I'll make a point of putting all of those links into the show notes so no one has to try and remember, what was the website? And then scrub back and forwards.
Yeah.
And there'll be a full transcription as well. So, don't worry, folks. If you missed any of those links, they're in the show notes. So don't worry about that. So whatever you're listening to this on, there'll be a list of click here to go to this website or to go to that website. So there's nothing to worry about there because that was a lot of links that we were just given. So don't worry about that. But yes, what I'll say, Tanya, is thank you ever so much for giving some more of your time to myself and to the listeners. I really appreciated it, and I feel like part of it was a bit of a sort of a meeting of the minds and a bit of a nerd out about security, and I learned a whole bunch of stuff too. So thank you ever so much.
Thank you so much for having me back, Jamie. Have a great day.
Thank you. You have a great day too. That was my interview with Tanya Janca. Be sure to check out the show notes for a bunch of links to some of the stuff that we covered and a full transcription of the interview. The show notes, as always, can be found at .netcore.show, and there will be a link directly to them in your podcatcher. And don't forget to spread the word. Leave a rating or review on your podcatcher of choice. Head over to .netcore.show/review for ways to do that. Or to reach out via our contact page, which is at .netcore.show/contact. And to come back next time for more .NET goodness. I'll see you again real soon. See you later, folks. .NET Core podcast is a production of RJJ Software Limited.